Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least. So in the previous purport, Prabhupada mentioned that Lord Krishna is so kind that he incarnates himself and takes part with the living entities in so many different activities, as Prabhupada says, in daily activities. So any historical fact, story, old or even more recent, if it is connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, or to the incarnations of the Supreme Lord, it is to be understood as being transcendental. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that actually these any stories that have no connection, even in the Puranas, even though they may be in the Puranas or even the Mahabharata, they are simply stories or historical facts. But when with Krishna they become transcendental. And this is the special significance of hearing these topics, and of course the special significance of hearing Srimad Bhagvatam. The Srimad Bhagvatam, although there are other Puranas, and the Puranas also mention so many different stories of perhaps even Krishna, or perhaps incarnations of Krishna. Also there's other mention of the creation and so on and so forth, different other stories. But ultimately they're all connected to the Supreme Lord. But the special significance of Srimad Bhagavatam, it mainly concentrates on the original fountainhead of all the incarnations, Sri Krishna Bhagavan, because Sri Krishna, he is the fountainhead, Ishvara Parama Krishna, this Lord Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna, it is Krishna, it is the Lord Govinda, who is actually the fountainhead of even all the other incarnations. So these stories, especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Purana, is about Krishna, so it has very special significance. And therefore Prabhupada and the Acharyas give a special importance in their commentaries on this Srimad Bhagavatam. We see Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and Sridhar Swami, and Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, so all the big acharyas give commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. Even though the other Puranas, and sometimes they also speak of the other Puranas, but special significance is given to this Purana, Bhagavat Purana, because Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, and especially it touches on the higher rasas of Krishna's relationships, which is the summum bonum of relationships. There you won't have so much description, even in the other Puranas, other Shastras, the incarnations that come, perform Leela, have their relationships with the devotees. But when we talk about Krishna, we start to, Srimad Bhagavatam starts to talk, especially later on, about the not only Dasya Ras and Sakya Ras, but Vatsalya Ras and Madhurya Ras, especially. So these higher rasas are not so much spoken of in the other Puranas even. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is no other than Krishna himself, very much glorifies the worship of Krishna and the worship of Radha and Krishna and all the Leela between Krishna and Radha and the gopis and all the other inhabitants, especially of Vrindavan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very much emphasizes this as the topmost position. So as Prabhupada explains here, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, he is Krishna himself in the garb of a devotee of Krishna, showing how to be a devotee. But nevertheless, he is Krishna. So this is, he recommends. And just like every morning we chant the Shikshashtakam, where he just prays to the Lord that he doesn't want other things. He just wants to be engaged life after life, birth after birth, in the Lord's service. specifically Sri Krishna, Govinda. So the special significance of Srimad Bhagavatam. But here, of course, these topics are mentioned, and these topics are very much elaborated in Mahabharata. The Kauravas and the Pandavas, the battle at Kurukshetra, Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra, Samaveta, Yutsava. This is the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, that this battle, primarily between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, was going on between relatives, but at the holy place of Kurukshetra. And then a summary is just given here in this verse, and here it is mentioned in the previous verse. Sutta Goswami was addressing all the rishis at Naimisharanya. And Naimisharanya, a very holy place also. I've been fortunate enough to go there a few times to Naimisharanya. There is a great ghat there. It is said that the chakra of Lord Vishnu went to that place and guided Lord Brahma as to where was the hub of the universe when he was planning how to rearrange all the planetary systems, everything. He wanted a hub, so it is said the Lord sent his chakra, and that chakra went in the Naimisharanya. So that is considered the hub. And so at that place there's one ghat that one can go for the holy dip there in the ghat, and it's a very holy place. And so many sages were assembled there. We know the circumstances of how they were discussing. Now Sutta Goswami has taken over from his father Ramahashana, who was offensive to Lord Balaram, and Sutta Goswami was installed as the speaker, and everyone accepted him. And all the rishis were there, 60,000 rishis, their estimate, headed by Sanak Rishi, also very elderly, very venerable personality. So now Sutta Goswami is speaking at Naimisharanya, and he's giving a summary here, and this chapter is entitled "The Son of Drona Punished." So who is the son of Dronacharya that Sutta Goswami is speaking of? Ashvatthama is mentioned here. Ashvatthama. So he will be, now as we go through this chapter, he will be punished. And later on the description will be there how Arjuna chases after him because of this act. Because of this act, and not only that, but he also tried to kill off not only the sleeping sons of the Pandavas, but also Maharaj Parikshit. So later on we'll read about how he was punished by Arjuna and ultimately by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But of course the description is given here. When the battle was fought, mainly everyone was killed. And it is said that the Kshatriyas who fought the noble, as warriors, fought the noble battle, doing their duty as Kshatriyas. It is said the Kshatriyas, when they do their duty, they are if they lose their life in the battle, they will attain the higher planetary systems. And many of them, of course, died in the presence of Lord Krishna. So their future position is very elevated. Some who were very special may have even gone back home, back to Godhead directly. Others were elevated to the heavenly planets. So here, Sutta Goswami is starting, and so when the respective warriors, namely the Kauravas, were killed, so at the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra, Prabhupada actually does say here that the narrations of Srimad Bhagavatam more or less start from the, although they talk in Bhagavatam, there are many different topics of the creation and Shaga and Vishaga and so on, and so many different things. But as far as topics about Krishna, they were spoken about Krishna, where Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna. Shruti and Smriti, you could say. Shruti is spoken directly. So Lord Krishna spoke on the battlefield of Kurukshetra Bhagavad Gita at Jyotisa. There's a nice chariot there with Krishna and Arjuna at the Jyotisa. Now we have a nice property with temple there also, where we're developing now in that place. Prabhupada wanted a nice centre there. Finally we got the approval after all these years to make something. And so we have, of course, one center in Kurukshetra town, and we have another center at Kurukshetra Jyotisa, just nearby there, just close by there. And there they have kirtan and lectures and so on and so forth. They're building, they're developing that place. So there's a very famous place. So this, Krishna spoke these words of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna at Jyotisa, that place which gives the light of the Bhagavan, the light of the Lord Krishna's words. So they're very much glorified throughout the world, the words of Krishna. So many people are following. The Shruti spoken directly by Krishna. Then after the battle of Kurukshetra, and after Krishna, of course, left this world, when his Leela was over, as far as this particular time of coming, then so many things were said about the activities of Krishna. So Shruti and Smriti are spoken about. But both are considered transcendental, whether someone speaks directly or whether someone speaks about. It is the topic that is being spoken of is the important thing. It is the primary importance. And who is speaking? Of course, Krishna spoke directly. That is given special significance. But the primary is what is the topic? So I know that many of those of the Vedas, especially of the Brahmanas, they only accept the Vedas Shruti, except that is a Shruti directly spoken, and they don't give so much importance to the Smriti. But actually both are very, very important. In fact, one time when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was giving a series of lectures in Jagannath Puri, many were coming, and many of the Brahmana community. One Brahmana at the end said, very nice lecture, but I think that you were quoting too many passages from the Puranas. You should quote more from the Vedas directly. This is the Shruti. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he said, no, actually I regard the Puranas as more important, because many things are not completely understood in the Veda, and what is not understood in the Veda is explained very nicely in the Purana. And he gave many quotes to support his point of view. And so at the end of that discussion, that Brahmana accepted what he said and actually agreed with him. Oh yes, you've explained, but now I understand the importance of why you are quoting from the Purana. So the Puranas explain, especially for the layman, and there's different Puranas, especially for those in the mode of ignorance and mode of passion, mode of goodness. Bhagavad Purana is a mode of goodness, transcendental goodness, about Sri Krishna. Other Puranas, or the Shiva Puranas and Brahma Puranas and so on, and then the secondary Puranas, and they talk about so many different subject matters, and they're tailored more for a certain type of people. The Vedas themselves also, there are different sections, so many sections. But nevertheless, the topic is the important thing. Otherwise, if the topic of the transcendental personality of God is not there, then all these things are perhaps just rituals with no ultimate goal, and or just stories, or just historical facts of incidents with no connection to transcendence. Just like there's many stories told in the world, many incidents that happened in the distant past, in the not so distant past. So they're just stories. And so transcendentalists would not be very interested in those things. But we read here that Sutta Goswami speaking to the sages, headed by Sanakrishi, all they're very advanced sages, and he's speaking, and if there's no connection, why would they be interested to hear it? These are great sages who have detached from the world. They're not interested to hear just mundane subject matters. So taken separately, we may read about how, and quite graphic content, how he beheaded the sons. Why would transcendentalists be interested in these ghastly scenes? Of Kurukshetra, so many millions were killed, and Ashvatthama went into the tent, and while thinking that the Pandavas were there, he was angry at what happened to his father, Dronacharya, and he wanted to take the retaliation, and he went into the tent, even though the battle was more or less finished, he went in and he thought that the Pandavas were there sleeping, and he was prepared, even though Kshatriya code you don't kill the enemy if they're sleeping. There's many Kshatriya codes that, those who are the true warriors, someone who's surrendered to you or someone who's a lesser capability than you. There's all these types of conditions. Equals should fight only with equals. You don't take advantage of someone who hasn't got your power and then you just slaughter them. So there's all sorts of codes. So to kill someone who's sleeping, that is the most thing. That is outside of the Kshatriya code, and actually is mentioned here. That Ashvatthama, thinking that he would avenge Duryodhana, and what happened to his father Dronacharya, and what Bhima did to Duryodhana, took it and hit him below the belt. He had the story of Duryodhana. His mother and Gandhari wanted to give him the benediction that he would become invincible, and she told him, "Come naked before me in the morning." She had the blindfold on, and she was going to take the blindfold on, but by seeing her so much power, she would gaze at him and make his whole body invincible. But Krishna tricked him. He was going to go naked before his mother. Then when Krishna heard this, he went to him and said, "You can't go naked before your mother. How is it possible? You're going to go naked before your mother? This is very disrespectful. At least wear a gamsha." So he said like that. So Duryodhana was convinced. So then when he wore the gamsha, and then when Gandhari took her blindfold off, she saw him, and she gave all her power through a vision, so his body became invisible. But then when she was shocked, I told you to come naked. And now that what my vision was, I didn't see the whole body. I couldn't protect the whole body because that part of the body was covered by the gamsha. And so then, of course, the Pandavas found out that part of... Actually, they didn't find it. Bhimsen didn't know until Krishna indicated when he was fighting with Duryodhana, that it was going on for so many days, and both were... it was very equal. And because Duryodhana, Bhimsen, of course, was very strong, much more stronger than Duryodhana, but it is considered that even though Bhimsen was very expert with the mace, Duryodhana was slightly more expert than him with the mace. So the fighting was going on a long time, and then finally Krishna indicated, you strike him there, where he's not protected. Actually, because Bhimsen couldn't, he was so powerful, even though Duryodhana was very expert with the mace, still the powerful blows of Bhimsen would have killed an ordinary man. He struck him so many times, but because he was protected, had special kavacha there from the gaze of his mother. Even though he was striking him, he couldn't be killed. So Bhimsen was fighting a long time. He was very perplexed, and after some time, Krishna slapped his thigh. So Bhimsen got the hint. So then he struck and then he killed him. So to avenge that, he decided to kill the Pandavas. But when he brought their heads, he actually brought their heads, very heinous. He brought their heads to Duryodhana. Duryodhana could understand that these are not the Pandavas. These are the sons. He understood, and he was not at all happy that Ashvatthama. He said, "This is a very lowly act what you have done. Killed the sons while they were sleeping." And so this story is told. It's a very ghastly thing. And so why would transcendentalists be interested in all this type of thing? But there is some ultimate connection to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. God comes, His Leela's there, the forces there that were wreaking havoc. Originally that the Asuras were always waging war against the Devas in the heavenly planets, but were always being defeated by them. So they conspired with each other, well, instead of fighting the Devas, let us surreptitiously take birth on the earth in the different royal families, and then when we grow up, at least we'll rule the earth. If we can't defeat them there, we'll rule there. So, of course, then it became a burden to the earth. So many demoniac forces were, and she went to Lord Brahma. We know that. You probably heard on the Krishna Janmashtami. She went, Bhumi Devi, in the form of the demigod. She went to Lord Brahma and prayed, "Please, I'm being overburdened." So Lord Brahma prayed for Krishna to descend and right the situation. So this was ultimately the Lord's plan. That situation had to be righted too many demoniac forces. They were creating havoc all over the place. And so he righted the situation. He took although God has no sides ultimately, but for specific reasons, it seems that he has sides. So, of course, the Pandavas are his dear devotees. And so, and they were very righteous, and Yudhisthira was faultless. So Krishna supported Yudhisthira being the emperor, and that was his right. Duryodhana had usurped that, and by very unscrupulous means they banished them and everything like that, and they waged war to kill them. So Krishna supported Yudhisthira, supported Arjuna. So this was his mission and plan to have things. So ultimately it is all connected. So that's why the Transcendentalists are interested in it. They're not interested in just these stories as how there's big battles and the soldiers fought. And if it was, the transcendent, they wouldn't be interested in any other history, but because Krishna is connected, they're very interested in it. So all is Krishna Katha, as Prabhupada says here. Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita is certainly Krishna Katha. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha because it is spoken about Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya wanted everyone to be informed of both kathas, both Krishna kathas, and by his order. And then Prabhupada actually says here that Lord Chaitanya desired that all who are born in India seriously understand such Krishna kathas, and then after full realization preach the transcendental message to everyone in all parts of the world. This is a very famous order of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Chaitanya Charanamrita Bharata Bhumite Haila Manasa Janma Jarak Janma Sataka Kari Kara Upakara. So Kara Para Upakara. So this is a famous verse, Bharata Bhumita Haila Manasa Janma Jara Janma Sataka Kari Kara Para Upakara. Whoever takes birth in the land of the Bharatvarsha attains all the facilities of life. He may take advantage of these facilities for both material and spiritual advancement, and thus makes his life successful. After attaining the goal of life, one may distribute his knowledge and experience all over the world for humanitarian purposes. So, this Prabhupada explains, he says here that anyone who takes the birth in the Bharatvarsha, meaning he's talking about in India, is very fortunate. And this is due to his previous pious activities in the previous births. Because in India, so many holy places are there, so many transcendental instructions are there, and someone can very nicely advance his human life, both materially and spiritually. Both materially and spiritually. Actually, Prabhupada just mentioned that. These facilities, he may take advantage of the facilities, both material and spiritual, to progress on the spiritual life. So, and Prabhupada mentions here in this purport I'm reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita that India, at least previously, he said in the modern era, it has become a little disturbed, materially speaking, artificially, because although being born in India, so many have the facility to take up the spiritual life, unfortunately, not everyone is taking it up. And so there must be some reactions. And not only that, but there are some in India who are actively preaching against any spirituality. In fact, we know the history that when India gained the independence, and Prabhupada spoke about this with disgust actually, that when India gained independence, some of the leading politicians actively promoted materialism far over and above any spiritual. They actually made propaganda that the people of India were too religious. Now that we've got the independence, now we have to strive very hard for the material prosperity. Indian people have been too religious for too long, and this has stunted our growth on the material level. And all the holy places, actually, some of them encouraged industrialists to go there and build their factories there, just to break the spirit of the religiosity of the people. So Prabhupada very much condemned this attitude amongst the leading politicians of the time. Especially this was there very prevalent. Not all, but quite a few leading politicians were advocating this to make India strong materially and prosperous materially. But Prabhupada said they do not actually know what is the formula even from material prosperity. Material prosperity comes when someone advances spiritually. They do not understand that at the time of Maharaj Yudhisthira and the time of Lord Ram, that there wasn't any material prosperity, how things were so nice because the culture was very spiritual. He said at the times of Lord Ram, the times of Maharaj Yudhisthira, there wasn't even any extreme cold or any extreme heat. It was very pleasant. It's very easy to live in India because the climate is so nice at that time. There was no too hot, there was no too cold. The rain came very regularly, even in a way that didn't cause much disturbance. The rain would come at night time when everyone was sleeping, and by the morning then it was finished. You see, now we have all sorts of heavy rains and monsoons and floods and fire and so many disturbances, earthquakes and so on, and volcano eruptions and so many parts, but even in India. And material prosperity is good in some area but very bad in other area. So you have this disparity because people are neglecting, and so Prabhupada condemned that attitude, especially coming after independence. But if one actually wants true prosperity materially and spiritually, then best is to follow the spiritual path, because all prosperity comes from pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when Krishna is pleased, then all beings are satisfied. Lakshmi is Lakshmi Devi, she is satisfied. We know the story of Brigu. Brigu was in a group of brahmanas who were arguing, who is the supreme amongst the deities? Is it Lord Shiva, is it Lord Brahma, or is it Lord Vishnu? So they deputed Brigu to make a test, and so Brigu had devised some test. He would test them, and with Lord Brahma, when he went there, of course Brahma is his father, and when Lord Brahma was talking to him, he just ignored him and didn't respond. So this was very offensive. So he wanted to see Lord Brahma's reaction. Of course, whether he should have done that to Lord Brahma, that's something else. But anyway, he devised this test. Then he went to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva went to embrace him as his brother, but he said so many bad things. Verbally he said, "Oh, don't touch me, you are living in the crematorium," so many things he said. "You are inauspicious, your body is always dirty, covered with the ash." He said so many things like that, very offensive. And so Lord Brahma, he became a little angry, but he checked his anger. Lord Shiva started to chase after Brigu. Then he decided to test Lord Vishnu, and he went even further. When Lord Vishnu welcomed him, as he came towards him, Brigu kicked him right in the chest. And so so it went even further. And the first one was he ignored him. Second one was some verbal attack. Third one was some physical attack. That is considered the worst. So he kicked him right in the chest, and then of course Lord Vishnu's reaction was, "Oh, I must have offended you in some way. I hope your foot hasn't been injured on my hard chest." So he was very apologetic. This was his reaction. Of course, it is said Lakshmi Devi wasn't so favorably disposed. She didn't at all like that Brigu had kicked her husband in the chest just on greeting him. And so it is said from that time, Lakshmi Devi doesn't very much favor the brahmanas. She doesn't favor the brahmanas because of Brigu's offense. Being a brahmana, the whole brahmana community had to suffer. So it is said that she doesn't so much favor the brahmanas. She keeps them just. But of course, sometimes the brahmanas, by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of course, they're very much loved by the Lord. And even though they're neglected by Lakshmi, he sometimes makes nice arrangements for them. But anyway, so of course Brigu could understand that Lord Vishnu, he's so tolerant. A great person, one of the great qualities of a great person is he's able to tolerate very provoking situations, very provoking situations. This is one of the signs of a very great person. So he could understand that Lord Vishnu is very, very. He apologized, but still Lakshmi Devi, she didn't like it. But anyway, so that's a story in passing. But material prosperity, when Lord Krishna is pleased, when Lord Vishnu is pleased, Lakshmi Devi is already pleased, and someone gets so. Someone living in India has all opportunity because the culture is such that there will be the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so many places you can go to, the holy places, so many temples, so many active festivals, so many activities. So the culture. So Prabhupada says artificially now India is suffering, especially materially, because some offences were committed, some neglect was there, so therefore they have to get. Sometimes people in India after the lecture they ask, Swami, we are from India, we are knowing all these things, and we are following the Hindu Dharma, but why is it in India we see suffering? I said, yes, you have the Hindu Dharma, you have the transcendental knowledge, but unfortunately not everyone is following. That's the problem. Not everyone is following. The opportunity is there, but you're neglecting or you're going against it. So therefore there must be some reaction. So reaction will be more for people who know what they should be doing and then don't do it. But someone who's in ignorance, doesn't know, he may get reaction, but it'll be less because he's in ignorance. But someone who's in knowledge and still he acts sinfully, then his reaction will be more. So in one sense, those who are from India, been brought up in that culture, their reaction will be more because they are in the knowledge, and it's still they do it. But still, Prabhupada says it's artificial, and still he would sometimes say you just scratch the surface, and the culture is very strong there in India. So one is very, very fortunate, and one can, if one takes advantage, one can get liberation from material bondage. Therefore, it says those who have taken their birth in India must have performed many pious activities in the past life. In the past life, just to take the birth, just to take the human form in India, must have performed. In this Lakshita Lakshananam indicates that the human body attained in Bharatvash is very auspicious because the Vedic knowledge is there, the transcendental knowledge is there, Varnashram system is there. In the other parts of the world, this culture is not so. They have different cultures, they have some sort of spirituality, but India spiritual culture is very high, and especially Krishna, all these things are very high. So it's considered very auspicious to take birth. But if one doesn't follow or act sinfully, then the reaction will be more. So it's very foolish not to take advantage. But India, and now Prabhupada says here, he quotes a verse, he says that, unfortunately India, it says in the Western countries we find many defects, especially for spiritual advancement. Although the material facilities are very strong. Material facilities. So some piety must have been there in the former life to get such material facilities. So the material facilities, but some defect is there because the spiritual is not so strong. But on the other side, in India, the spiritual culture is very strong, but materially it is a defect. So therefore he quotes here, Anda Pangu Nyaya. This is the logic. The blind man, which he compares to the Western countries, the blind man, they don't have real understanding of the spiritual, what is real spiritual advancement. They become cheated, so many things. So they're like the blind men. And in India he compares to the lame man. The lame man, he can walk but he can't walk very good. And he compares that to the material side of things, compared to the West. Compared to the West, now India is catching up in many ways, but still, compared to the Western countries, India is considered lame, especially at the time Prabhupada was writing this. But if the blind man and the lame man combine together, if the blind man climbs, rather, if the lame man climbs on the shoulders of the blind man, the blind man can walk but can't see. The lame man can't walk so good but can see. So combinedly together, if they push forward the teachings of Lord Krishna, the teachings and the principles of Lord Chaitanya, then the whole world can change. The whole world can change. So here, and spearheading all this, Prabhupada says here, fortunately there's the Krishna consciousness movement to give all facilities for both material and spiritual advancement. In this way, people in the Western countries may take advantage of this movement. Therefore, it is the duty, especially of those who were born in India, Bharate Bhumite Haila, Manasya Janmajara, Janmasatakakari Kara Para Upakara, to follow this spiritual culture, become advanced in the spiritual culture, understand nicely what is the spiritual culture, have the realization, and when one gets the wisdom and the realization, then to spread this teaching all over the world. It is the duty, and this is what Lord Chaitanya, he says this is more or less the order. Those who have taken their birth in the Bharatvash, they should make it their duty to spread these teachings all over the world. So Prabhupada, he did it. He did it. He took the order of Lord Chaitanya very seriously, and he went himself initially, of course, just by himself, and such a miraculous achievement he was able to perform. And then gradually he got some help. He went back to India, and then his idea was combinedly the Westerners with the Indians, and he said that yes, in the future, many from our devotees from India, they can go to the West with the spiritual culture. They can do the preaching. They can show the culture, how to do the nice kirtan, how to worship the deity, how to do so many different sevas, and they can teach the Westerners how to do these things very nicely. So this was always Prabhupada's mood, and of course it wasn't a mood just coming from him only. It was a mood actually coming from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and especially all the followers of Lord Chaitanya. So we are the Brahma Madhva Gauriya Sampradaya, coming from Lord Chaitanya. So this was Lord Chaitanya's mood, and he wanted, especially those born in Bharatvash in India, to take this very seriously and make it their life's goal to have this realization and to spread it and to all over the world for the benefit. He calls it humanitarian activity. Humanitarian is actually not only the material things, but more importantly, the spiritual things, spreading the spiritual culture. This is true humanitarian work. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yadamride Kodava Sinjayanam Videsh Ato Vira Gatim Gateshu Vikodara Vira Gada Bimarsha Bagnoru Dande Ditrashta Putre. When the respective warriors of both camps, naming the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimsana, the son of Dronacharya, Ashvatthama, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered them as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased at the least. Any questions or comments in regard to this verse? Yes, Prabhu.
We are talking about Kshatriya that they generally kill, but what is necessary to kill every one of them? They would have put them in the jail and reform them, appease them. So why only killing is promoted everywhere?
Sorry, is that
all the Kshatriya.
Oh, the Kshatriya.
Yeah, they kill one another. They kill the people. Generally, they should arrest them, reform them, and make them good people. This is just permitting their bodies.
Oh.
Why would it have been being done right from the beginning?
You're talking.
Kill?
Yeah. Why kill?
Yeah. Why not to reform them?
Well, they tried to reform. This is the last resort. Last resort. You know, the Kshatriyas are first of all danda. This is danda. There's a different codes for the Kshatriyas and for the kings. first of all, they'll try to discuss, try to resolve by discussing. They'll offer incentives. There's so many. If you read the instructions of Bhimsena to Yudhisthira, all these things are described by him. What are the duties of the king? And so the kings, their duties, they're educated in this thing. So first of all, they will try all sorts of things. And Krishna himself tried to make the peace when he came. So but if nothing works and still one side is hell-bent on wanting to kill the other side, then the other side has to, as the last resort, go to the danda. They have to fight back. They have to protect. So just like today, today you have the police, you have the soldiers, just like the police. Their last resort will be to shoot someone and kill someone. They'll try to apprehend him first, try to take him to the court and everything like that. But sometimes someone he's coming attacking with the axe or something, or he's shooting at the innocent people. And so as last resort, they try to talk to him. But still he is not doing it. So last resort, they have to kill him. Otherwise he will kill so many. So this battle of Kurukshetra. This is the last resort. So for Kshatriyas, last resort is killing one another. So this is what we're reading here about Kurukshetra, is last resort. All things were tried but failed. And so you can read through, if you read through Mahabharata, you see so many instances of trying to talk with Bhishma, Bhishma trying to talk, and Dronacharya himself trying to talk to Dhritarashtra, trying to talk to Duryodhana. Why do you have to follow this path? And so on and so forth. So many attempts were made. But Duryodhana was hell-bent. He wanted to fight and kill them. He tried to kill them surreptitiously in so many ways already. And he was preached against, and so many different personalities, Krishna himself. But then all attempts failed, so the last resort had to be like this. And ultimately, God's plan is that there was a burden of the demoniac forces. They had to go back to... But because they died in this way at Kurukshetra, which was a holy place, and because Krishna was there, and they were doing their duty as Kshatriyas, they attained the heavenly abode. But someone who's just fighting without being authorized in this way, and killing, then they'll have to get the reaction for the killing. But generally the first thing, yes, apprehend him and reform that person. Try many different things to do the reformation. But if all fails, that sometimes you have to get the death penalty. It must be there. And actually, the death penalty means that he is freed from that. That's it as far as reactions. Therefore, as devotees, Prabhupada always said, we are in favor of the death penalty for some people, if they are killing other people. Because if they're not given the death penalty, they'll have to suffer life after life. Their reactions for murdering other people, will be life after life after life. But if they get the death penalty, then their reaction will be finished. All right, that person murdered so many, he has to forfeit his life. That is the reaction. That is also in the Manu Samhita. Therefore, and then when he forfeits his life, that's it, the reaction's finished. No more reactions for him in the future. He has given his life. He's murdered the other ones, he has to be killed now. That is the punishment. Otherwise, if he is not, then he will go, the reaction may go many, many lives. We will go many, many lives. Many, many lives it will go. But when death penalty is there, that's finished. That's it. Then next life start fresh. So therefore, we are in favour, not for all circumstances, but for some, proven murderers and everything like that, they have to be given the death penalty, actually. We're in favour of the death penalty for those types of persons. Any other question? Jai Shri Radha Gopinath Ki Jai Gopamanandi Hari Hari Bol.